This is All Things Cooperatives, the podcast about the unique ways that cooperatives are addressing needs and community challenges. I'm your host, Deb Troca, Executive Director of the Indiana Cooperative Development Center. Welcome to the All Things Cooperatives podcast. I'm Deb Troca, Director of the Indiana Cooperative Development Center, and your host for today's podcast. Our conversation today will focus on purchasing co-ops as a solution for reducing costs for small businesses in the areas of purchasing and marketing. According to the U.S. Small Business Administration, in 2023, there were 33.3 million small businesses employing 61.6 million people, or almost 46% of the entire U.S. workforce. 1 in 5 small businesses fail within the first year, or 20%, 30% in the second year, and 50% by year 5. Today's small business owners face a number of challenges, from finding customers to increasing brand awareness, to inflation and economic uncertainty, to supply chain interruptions. Being a member of a cooperative can help take some of the uncertainty out of business ownership and help stabilize small businesses. My guest today is Gary Pittsford with CFP. I'm going to ask Gary to introduce himself.
Good morning, Deb. It's good to be with all of you. What you just covered was some very important points leading up to our discussion about co-ops, especially co-ops and purchasing co-ops in the state of Indiana. So anyway, I've been at this for about 50 years, and I've worked with thousands and thousands of members that belong to co-ops in all 50 states across the country. But it's always more fun to work with people back here in Indiana where I live.
Well, thanks, Gary. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with cooperatives and in purchasing cooperatives in particular?
About maybe 45 years ago, I started working with some business owners that belonged to a co-op, and then that kind of grew because the store owners had all kinds of questions and they needed help. And I started working with a few, and then it grew more and more and more. And then other co-ops asked me to come and help their members. And over the last 50 years or 45 years, maybe, I now, my organization that I'm semi-retired from, and works with dozens and dozens of different types of co-ops all across the country. So I help the members with lots of financial decisions. My world is in the financial area, okay? And we'll talk about different types of co-ops, in a few minutes.
So what do you see as some of the advantages of the co-op business model for small businesses?
Well, let me go back to what you just said. There are 33 million private businesses in the United States, approximately right now. And about 25 to 26 million are people that have 1 or 2 employees, okay? There's only about 7 or 8 million that have more than 2 employees, more than 5 employees. And those are the ones that have 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 employees. The typical small business that belongs to a co-op has between 10 and 20 employees. They've got a great little business. They do well for themselves and for their employees and for their community. And so being part of a co-op, we'll talk more about, in a few minutes. But for a store owner or a business owner to belong to a co-op, which means that he belongs to a group of individuals, like it could be 50 or 100, or it could be 1,000 members that all think the same way. They all want to do the same thing. We'll talk later about different types of retail stores, different types of grocery stores, different kinds of co-ops in Indiana. And it's better for a co-op member or for a store owner to be part of a co-op because it gives them bigger purchasing power. It gives them people to talk to. You can talk to the other members. Well, I'm thinking about running my business this way. Did you try it? Was it successful? I'm thinking about adding this to my inventory. Have you added it to your inventory? Is it successful? I'm thinking about opening up a second location. You've already done that when he's talking to other members. Was it successful? What mistakes did you make? So being part of a co-op and being able to talk to 50 or 100 other people that are doing the same thing you're doing makes your success easier as you run your family business. Being part of a co-op is better in most cases than trying to do it alone.
Would you say that not only do you get the benefit of the wisdom of other members, but that, and you mentioned purchasing power helps to kind of level the playing field, or perhaps if you're in an industry that has big box stores or, giant organizations, that this helps level the playing field?
Yes. If you have a store, and there's a lot of stores, there's, I don't know, maybe a couple million stores out of that 33 million that have annual sales of over $1 million. Let's say your purchasing power is $1 million. Your store sales last year was $1 million. Okay. Well, when you go to your suppliers and your vendors and you try and negotiate a price, you've only got a purchasing power of $1 million. Okay. If you belong to a co-op of 50 or 100 or 500 members, your total purchasing could be $50 million. Okay. Well, talking to your vendors and negotiating a price for 50 million, you're going to get a better price than you would with $1 million. So it gives you much bigger buying power.
So you were talking about, as a business owner, negotiating with your vendors and suppliers, but in a co-op, are you doing that negotiating, or is the co-op structure, the management of the co-op, doing that for you?
The co-op will do it for you. That's one of the benefits, is that you've got professionally trained managers of different sections. One of the largest co-ops in Indiana is in Fort Wayne, a company. It's in the hardware business called Do It Best. It's one of the biggest companies in Indiana. Do It Best probably has purchasing. They probably purchase, I'm guessing that it's at least 2 or 3 billion a year. It's going to be hard for one store to compete with that kind of purchasing power, even 2 or 3 stores. So being part of the co-op and letting the professionals help you purchase inventory, help you with accounts receivable, help you with the best kind of software, help you with employee training. The co-ops, as they get bigger and bigger, provide lots of services to their members and help their members in all these areas, whether it be inventory or advertising in the local newspaper or on television, whether it be computer software, cash registers. It's just everything involved in a retail type store. The co-op can help you with, how to set up your aisles, what should be on aisle 1 and what should be on aisle 6. The co-ops help you with all those things.
So if I was, say, I'm a small business owner of a hardware store, how would I go about becoming a member of Do It Best? Is it by invitation only, or would I contact Do It Best? How does that work?
No, you would contact Do It Best or any other hardware operation. You would contact them and say, hey, I have a store that I've been running for 2 years, and it's not doing real well, and I'm located in ABC city in the state of Indiana, or maybe I'm in Illinois, or maybe I'm in New Mexico, wherever I'm located. And they're going to say, well, we don't have another member within 10 or 20 miles of where you're located. So our rules are that we don't want to put one member on top of another member. Okay. So if you don't have another Do It Best store within your radius of 10 or 20 miles, then they would invite you to be a member, and you buy some stock, and you get you sign a contract to buy stuff from them through their warehouse, and you get their lower prices. The other thing about being part of a co-op, and this is true with almost all co-ops, is that you're going to get dividends back, whether it be in the hardware business or some other business. But if you purchase $1 million through the warehouse of the co-op that you belong to, like we were talking about Do It Best here in Indiana, you buy through the warehouse, then you get a dividend back because you bought a lot of stuff through the warehouse, which helps Do It Best, which helps all the members, because the bigger they get, the better pricing they can provide. So at the end of the year, you get a big dividend check. It could be 10,000, it could be 20, it could be 50,000. Some co-op members get really big checks at the end of the year. If they have 2, 3, 4 stores, it makes their dividend. So doing that through the co-op, getting the lower price, and then getting a dividend at the end of the year is another advantage of being part of a cooperative.
As a member, would I have to purchase everything through the co-op, or do I have the option to purchase wherever I want to?
Most co-ops, every co-op's a little different. So you want to read the fine print when you're talking to a co-op, whether it be retail hardware, or it could be a lumber yard, or it could be a grocery store, or it could be, we'll talk about other co-ops in a minute. But most of them allow you to buy 10 or 20 or 30% of your inventory through local vendors. You don't have to buy 100% through the co-op, because if you're located in Seattle, Washington, and there's a company that makes leather gloves 2 miles from your store, you might want to buy it straight from them because you can get a great price because you're so close. Or maybe if you're selling potted plants, a lot of hardware stores sell what we call green goods, which is potted plants and flowers and shrubs and bushes. Well, there could be a nursery 5 miles away that wants to supply you with those green goods, and the price is pretty good because they're so close. So you don't have to buy 100%. Usually you don't have to buy 100% from the co-op, but you want to read the fine print and talk to them. But co-ops are usually pretty flexible about dealing with vendors that are close to you.
So you talked about you have a very long career working with cooperatives and purchasing cooperatives. Could you choose a co-op that you have worked with and talk a little bit about that co-op, the kinds of services that you provide for them, and kind of give us a fuller picture of that particular co-op?
I'll just say, in the hardware industry, I work with almost every company, every co-op in the hardware industry. I think later we'll talk about different kinds of co-ops, but if we talk about hardware, because Do It Best is located here in Indiana, the things that we do for the co-op organization is to help their members with financial decisions. The co-ops are great at providing inventory at low prices, educating their employees, helping them with software, helping them with advertising, helping them run their store, helping them make their retail store better. But co-ops tend to stay away from all the financial decisions, like what kind of company should you have, a C Corp or an S Corp or an LLC or a partnership, okay? I've got, my brother and I own stock in this business, and as 2 stockholders, you should have a buy-sell agreement. A lot of stores don't have buy-sell agreements. I was working with a company in Florida. I'm still working with them. I'm trying to get it done. And these 2 brothers own the company about 50-50, and they're both in their 60s. I'm just giving you this as an example of the kinds of business owners that I run into every day. They're both in their 60s, okay? One's got heart problems, the other one's got cancer. One's got kids in the business, the other one doesn't. They were at one of the conventions that I spoke at about a year ago, and then they called me and said, "Can you help us out?" So these 2 brothers, they're in their 60s. They have all these problems. They do not have wills and trusts. They do not have a buy-sell agreement. They don't have any leases on the buildings that they rent back to the company. And it's a very big business. And they've had no excellent accounting help, tax help, legal help. Luckily, neither one of them has died. Okay. When a stockholder dies, then we have all kinds of problems. Okay. But what I'm leading up to is that we provide, or what I've been providing, is all this financial help. Like, as a business owner, you need certain types of wills and trusts. If there's 2, 3, or 4, or 5, or 10, or 20 stockholders, you need a buy-sell agreement. a shareholder agreement that protects the company and protects all the shareholders. They're called trigger points, So in case anybody dies, gets divorced, becomes disabled, has personal bankruptcy, retires, all those things need to be covered in the buy-sell agreement, So if nobody gets divorced and nobody gets Alzheimer's and nobody gets cancer, then maybe you don't need it right away, but you need those kind of documents. You need what's called a triple net lease. If you buy a building and lease it back to your company, you need a lease agreement. You need an IRA, retirement account. You need a 401k plan. You need all kinds of legal help, investment help, tax help. And that's the kind of stuff that we've done for the members, because a successful business owner, whether they own a grocery store or a hardware store or a furniture store or whatever kind of business they have, they know everything about that business. But all this legal and tax stuff, they don't know. They've never been taught this kind of stuff, And my family are all business owners. Everybody in my family are all farmers. So there's nobody more hard-headed than an Indiana farmer. So I'm used to dealing with business owners, and it's fun to work with those kind of people. I've worked with every kind of client you can think of in the last 50 years, but it's fun to help business owners because they need help. They need all these financial answers. They know how to run their business. They know everything about every product on every shelf in their store. They know everything, but they don't know how to minimize taxes. So they don't know how to set up retirement. And after 30, 40, 50 years of running your company, at a convention, they'll come up to me and they'll say, Gary, I want to retire in 3 years. What do I do? What do I do? That's the biggest question that I get all over the country. People come up to me and they say, Gary, what do I do? I don't know where to start. I can fix a car or I can sell, apples and potatoes, but I don't know how to retire. Okay, what do I do? So helping business owners, and that's what the co-ops want from us, is that they want us to help their members become better financially, because they want to help their members, because if their members are strong and healthy financially, that makes them a better member of the co-op. So anyway, I don't want to dwell on this, but those are the kind of things. All that financial stuff is what we do for the members that belong to a co-op.
So would it be fair to say that most small business owners, and obviously you work mostly with co-op members, but succession planning would be a point of, we really haven't done anything, or we haven't thought about it, or, oh my gosh, I'm 65 now, what do I do? So is that one of the big areas that you see small business owners, a trap they're falling into of not being prepared for what comes next when they're ready to retire?
Yes, it is a big trap because they don't understand all this financial stuff, and most of them have been running their companies for 30, 40 years. When I go to a convention and if there's a couple hundred people in this big classroom, most of them are 60, 70, 80, or 90 years old. A lot of them are 70 and 80 years old, and they've got their 50-year-old son or daughter with them at the meeting, and they don't know what to do. So they come up and they say, I want to sell to my daughter, or I want to sell to my son. How do I do it? I want to retire, but I want them to take over. How do I do it? My kids don't want the business, but I've got a great manager and he wants to buy me out. How do I do it? I don't have anybody in the company, but there's a guy 50 miles down the road, has the same kind of company. I kind of like that guy. He wants to buy me out. How do I do it? So the succession planning is a big item, and we go back to your first comments. Out of the 7 or 8 million business owners that have more than 5 or 10 employees, about 50% of them are over the age of 55. So in the next 5 years or so, we're going to have about 50% of our closely held business industry change hands. That 50% is going to sell and somebody's going to buy because they're just older. If you go to any convention, and I can rattle off a list of 10 or 15 companies, and you look around, most of the people in this great big convention hall have either no hair or white hair, and And they're trying to figure out, I want to retire. How do I do this? I don't want to come to these conventions anymore. So co-ops, they want us to help their members, and we don't sell anything. I hate it when insurance agents and stockbrokers try and sell something to a business owner to solve a problem, because selling products and getting a commission doesn't help that much. There are other ways to solve problems without selling something. But anyway, yeah, succession planning is a big problem because a high percentage of the business owners are over 55 or 60 years old. And the next few years, we've got a lot of work to do to help the co-ops. Because if the co-op has 1,000 members and 200 people die, they don't want to lose 200 stores. They want the other 800 to absorb these 200 where the owner died or had a heart attack or something went wrong, So they're trying to protect their co-op and also protect their members. They don't want their purchasing power to go from 1 billion a year from 2 billion a year to 1 billion a year. They got to maintain the size of their co-op in order to continue to provide great service to all their members.
So you've alluded to in your comments that purchasing co-ops are in all kinds of different industry sectors. Could you talk a little bit about that and maybe some examples of purchasing co-ops in various industries?
Some of the groups that we've worked with, we talked about the hardware industry. You've got Do It Best here in Indiana. There's Ace Hardware, which is in Chicago. There's True Value Hardware, which is in Chicago. There's Orgill, which is in Memphis. And there's lots of small groups. Doyle Wallace, Wallace Hardware down in Tennessee has a small 200 or 300, 400 stores. But the hardware industry is an excellent example, okay? The carpet industry. We work with a group called CCA Global, which has carpet stores all over the United States. Carpet One stores, Flooring America stores, the carpet stores, pharmacies. Pharmacies band together in order to have better buying power when all the drugs that they have in their stores for sale. Pharmacies band together. Veterinarians, which is a fairly new group, a few years old, but the Veterinary Cooperative has about 4,000 veterinarians all across the country that have banded together to have better buying power, for all the products and all the drugs and chemicals that they provide for the animals, whether it be small animals or large animals, but veterinarians, furniture stores. There's a co-op called Furniture First, which has got, several hundred members, which are furniture stores all across the country. Well, they can buy this bed or this living room couch by being part of a large co-op. They can get a better price, when they buy that product from, North Carolina or wherever it's made. Furniture stores band together and create a co-op. Like I said, pharmacies, drugstores, elevators here in Indiana, the elevators where farmers take their grain, Farm Bureau Co-op, electrical, which probably doesn't relate to store owners that much, but here in Indiana, the rural electric are co-ops that help, and people belong to that to get their electricity. So that's another form of co-op, but it's not a purchasing co-op that you would belong to. Companies like Blue Hawk that sell heating and air conditioning. Blue Hawk is another big co-op. Office supplies. There's a big group called ISG that has a lot of members, several hundred members all over the country, and they're office supply stores, anything that an office needs. So those are some examples. Industrial tools, a contractor that builds houses, he needs all kinds of ladders and air guns and nail guns and all kinds of equipment to build houses. And there are companies that sell that. One's called Sphere One. So these are in every industry that you can think of, and you've worked with a lot of them yourself, Deb. There's a young man by the name of Greg Brodsky, who's the son of Howard Brodsky that works with CCA Global. Greg has a company called Start.coop, and he helps start co-ops. And he's called me a few times, and we've talked about lots of things, but I don't know, several months ago, he called me about a new group that he was helping. and it was a group of beer distilleries, people that make all kinds of beer. And I said, I think I need to help you with that group. When's the next meeting? I want to be there. Greg has a company that specializes in helping a bunch of guys get together and create a co-op. So it's start.coop. It's Greg Brodsky, and he has a lot of fun helping new groups get started. So that's just some. There's lots and lots. The National Co-op Business Association in Washington, D.C., I don't know, they've got over 30,000 members, and you know more about them than I do, but the NCBA works with co-ops all over the country, and I've tried to help the NCBA in Washington. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting coming up next month. I've got to go to Washington to talk to them. So anyway, that's some of the names. I don't know if you want any more or not.
Do you have any idea of how many purchasing co-ops there are out there?
Well, the NCBA in Washington, which is the National Association, says they have 30,000 members. Maybe it's a little bit more than that now. But you take 30,000 co-ops, and some of them have 200, 300, 400 members. Some of them have 3,000 and 4,000 and 5,000 members. So when you add them all up, there's millions of store owners or company owners, operators in different cities, small cities and big cities, that belong to a co-op and get all the advantages of being part of a co-op. So there's just millions and millions of people that are members of those bigger co-ops.
So if I was a small business owner who was interested in, I'm fairly successful. I've been in business for a while. What advice would you give me about looking at the opportunity of becoming part of a co-op?
Most people join the co-op towards the beginning of their career. If you're talking about somebody who's been in business for a while and they're pretty successful at what they're doing, they're not struggling anymore, they need to take a look at if they have a co-op that specializes in their area. Let's say it's a grocery co-op, or let's say it's a furniture co-op, or if it's a furniture store or a grocery store or a hardware store, chances are pretty good, probably 60, 70%, that they would do better if they joined a co-op. You may be doing great right now, but you probably would do better if you joined a co-op that's part of your industry, because you're going to get bigger buying power. You're going to get more corporate help in the areas of advertising and computer software and training employees. These co-ops have classes where they train the outside employees or the inside employees, or they train people on how to run the paint department, how to run the paint machine. There's all, small engine repair, if they're working on chainsaws or something, or lawnmowers. And so the co-op will probably help most business owners. You may be doing well now, but you could probably do better if you belong to a co-op that was in your industry.
And if I'm a small business owner who's just getting started, would you advise me to quickly, early on, become part of a co-op to help grow the business?
Yes, I would. Yeah, because it increases your chance of success. You're an entrepreneur. You've stuck your neck out. You've opened a business. Maybe it's a bakery, and you love to make cakes. Okay, so you want to start a business and you want to make cakes. You want to be in a bakery. Your chances of being successful for the next 20, 30 years would probably be better if you joined, if there is a bakery cooperative, and joined them, because they would help you get better buying power so that your ingredients would come to you cheaper. They would help you with better equipment for your stores, better ovens, better displays, better software, better advertising. You got to get your name out, let people know that you love to make cakes. I'm just using that as an example, but you're an entrepreneur. You've stuck your neck out. You hung out your name on the building and whatever it is you're going to be selling. You've borrowed a bunch of money from a bank. You bought a bunch of inventory. You're hoping that the customers come through the front door. I could open up Gary's Hardware and I might be okay. But here in Indiana and different parts of the country, wherever they concentrate, but if it was Gary's Do It Best hardware store, people would say, "Oh, I know that name." So recognition would be better. And being part of the co-op where you get better advertising, better name recognition, makes your chances of success better. So I want entrepreneurs. I want millions of entrepreneurs in this country, but I want them to be successful. And your chances of being successful, if you go on your own by yourself, maybe you'll make it, But if you belong to a co-op that's got 500 other members that are struggling just like you, and those other 500 members are helping you with ideas, sharing ideas, what works, what doesn't work, your chances of success are better. So I want you to make money. I want you to pay off those bank loans. I want you to make profit. I want you to build your net worth, and I want you to retire comfortably. And your chances to do all of that are probably better if you're part of a bigger buying group.
Thank you, Gary. I think we could safely say that as a small business owner, if you're in an industry that has a purchasing co-op, that it would be in your best interest to at least investigate the idea, see if it's a good fit for you to help grow and strengthen your business.
Yeah, the co-ops are an excellent type of organization to help business owners. They don't dictate to their members, but they help their members. Most co-ops are not, that they don't demand certain things, but they help their members, and they help the members on the product side and running the business side. And what they want us to do is to help them with all the financial side, because business owners don't do the stuff that we do. So we try and provide that information. That's why I go to a lot of conventions. I like doing podcasts like you and I are doing right now. I like going to conventions and answering questions from people in the audience. People in the audience say, "Well, my attorney told me this, my accountant told me this, my insurance agent told me this. Who's right?" So I love going to those conventions and answering their questions. We try to help as many members as possible.
Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate your willingness to share your expertise about purchasing co-ops and your experience over the years, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Deb, it's always great being with you. Thank you. I appreciate everything. It's good to answer your questions. I hope all the co-op members in Indiana continue to have great success.
Thanks, Gary. You've been listening to All Things Cooperatives, the podcast about the unique ways that cooperatives are addressing needs and community challenges. This podcast is copyrighted 2024 by the Indiana Cooperative Development Center, which retains all rights to the content. The podcast was produced by Lee Llewellyn at FOS Studios in Carmel, Indiana. Theme music was written and performed by Lee Llewellyn.